Hello friends, are you preparing for a Power Apps interview and want to stand out from the crowd? So in this video I will walk you through 30 advanced interview questions and the descriptive answers that will cover the most important topics like Dataverse, SQL Server, API, custom connectors and the delegation. So whether you are a beginner aiming to break into the Power Apps or Power Platform world or an experienced developer that who is brushing up for your next big opportunity. So this guide will help you the confidence to tackle even the toughest question. So grab a notebook, hit that subscribe button and let's dive into the ultimate Power Apps interview preparation for the 2025 and 2026. So first question is, what is Microsoft Dataverse and why is it used in the enterprise application? So Dataverse is nothing but a cloud-based data storage and a management service that provide the relational tables, built-in security and the integration with the Power Platform. It is used for the enterprise-grade scenario that support the structured data, role-based security and the scalability. Next question is, how does Dataverse differ from the traditional database like SQL Server? So unlike SQL Server, Dataverse is tightly integrated with the Power Apps, Power Automate and the Dynamic 365. And it provides the low-code interface, automatic schema management and the built-in connectors. Whereas SQL Server requires the manual setup and the administrator. Explain the concept of table in the Dataverse. So table in the Dataverse are similar to the relational database tables that store the row of the records and the column of the fields. So table can be standard that is provided by the Microsoft and are the customs that can be created by the users. And they both support the relationships, business rules and the calculated fields. What security feature does Dataverse provide? So Dataverse provide role-based access control, field level security, auditing and the compliance with enterprise standards. It also ensures the sensitive data is protected while allowing the granular permissions. How does Dataverse handle relationship between the tables? So Dataverse support one-to-many, many-to-one relationship between the tables, and these relationships allow the developers to model the complex business scenario similar to relational database while maintaining the referential integrity. Can Dataverse integrate with external system? Yes. Dataverse can be integrated with the external system via using the connectors, API or the Power Platform tool. It can also connect to Dynamic 365, SharePoint, Teams and third-party services. What are the advantages of using Dataverse over SharePoint list for data storage? So Dataverse basically provides the relational data modeling, advanced security and the scalability. While SharePoint lists are simpler but limited in the handling the complex relationship and the large data sets. How can Power Apps connect to SQL Server? So Power Apps connect to SQL Server using the SQL Server connectors. It allows to read and write the data directly to the SQL table. It also supports both on-premise and the cloud-hosted database. What are the challenges of connecting the Power Apps to on-premise SQL Server? So on-premise connections require a data gateway, proper firewall configurations and the authentication setup. And the latency and the security compliance are the common challenges to connect with that one. Explain the role of API in advanced data connections. So API basically allowed applications to interact with the external services and the database. They also provide the standard endpoints for the CRUD operations. It enables the integration with the systems like ERP, CRM or the custom applications. What are the difference between the REST and SOAP API? So REST API are the lightweight HTTP method like GET, POST, PUT, delete. and a JSON XML format. Whereas SOAP API rely on the XML based messaging with strict standards. So REST is more common in the modern integration due to its simplicity. How do you secure the API connections in the enterprise applications? So security is ensured using the authentication methods like Auth 2.0, API key and the SSL TLS encryptions. Role-based access and the throttling policy also help to preventing the misuse of this one. What is the role of on-premise data gateway in the SQL Server connections? So gateway act basically as a bridge between the cloud service like Power Apps, Power BI and the on-premise SQL Server. And it enables the secure data transfer without exposing the database directly to the internet. How do API improve the scalability in the enterprise applications? So basically API decoupled the services. It allowed the independent scaling. For example, a mobile app can query an API without directly accessing the database, reducing the load and it improve the performance. What is a custom connector in the Power Platform? So a custom connector basically allows a developer to define and connect to REST API that are not available in the standard connectors. It also enables the integration with a proprietary or the niche services. How do you create a custom connector? So in this, developer basically define the API based URL, authentication methods and the endpoint. And they can import an open API definitions or the manually configure the request and the responses. What authentication methods are supported in the custom connectors? So custom connector basically support the API key, OAuth 2.0 and the basic authentication. OAuth 2.0 is preferred for the secure enterprise integrations. Can custom connectors handle the complex API responses? Yes. Basically, they can pass the JSON responses, map the fields to Power Apps, and handle the nested structures. Developers can define the schema to ensure the proper data handling. What are the benefits of using custom connector over a direct HTTP request? So custom connectors basically provide the reusable, secure and the user-friendly integrations. They abstract the API complexity, making it easier for non-developers to use the API in the apps or the flow. How do you test and validate a custom connector? So Power Platform basically provide a test interface where the developers can run the API calls, inspect the response and debug the whatever issues before deploying the connectors. What is the role of OpenAPI in the custom connectors? So basically OpenAPI defines the API endpoints, parameters and the responses. It can be importing a Swagger file that simplify the connectors creations by the auto generating configurations. What is delegation in the Power Apps? So delegation is the process of pushing the data query to the data source instead of retrieving all the records locally. So by this way it will ensure the efficient handling of the large data set. Why delegation important in the enterprise application? So without delegation, Power Apps would attempt to load all the records into the memory that will cause the performance issue. So by this way, delegation allows the scalable query directly at the source level. Which data source support the delegation? Dataverse, SQL Server and the SharePoint support the delegation for many query operations. However, Not all functions are delegable, so developers must check the compatibility. What are common non-delegable functions in the Power App? So count row, sum and certain string manipulations may not be delegable because using them on the large dataset can cause the incomplete results. How can developers identify the delegation warning in the Power Apps? So Power Apps basically show a blue warning triangle when a formula include the non-delegable functions. So developer must adjust the query to avoid the performance issue. What strategies can be used to handle non-delegable queries? So developers can filter the data at the source level. They can use the index column or restructure the formula to rely on delegable functions. Explain the difference between the client side and server side processing in the delegation. So client side processing basically happens in the app after the data is retrieved, while server side processing executes the query directly on the database and it reduces the data transfer. How does delegation impact the mobile app performance? So by this way delegation reduce the memory usage and the network traffic. It also makes the mobile apps faster and more responsive when working with the large data set. What are the best practices should be followed for the delegation? So for the delegable functions, we should minimize the data retrieval, design the query to run at the source level. So developers should test with large data set to ensure the scalability. So thank you for watching this Power Apps interview preparation guide. By this way, we covered 30 advanced questions and the answers on the Dataverse, SQL Server API, and the custom connectors and the delegation. That is the exact topic you will need to master for your next interview. So, if you found this helpful, make sure to hit the like button, drop a comment with your favorite takeaway, and subscribe for more Power Apps tutorials, interview tips, and the deep dives into the Microsoft Power Platform. So stay tuned. I will be sharing more practical guides and the real world scenario to help you level up your Power Apps skill. So until next time, keep building smarter apps and good luck with your interview. Thanks for watching.